welcome to our webinar. Today, I'm going to be talking about our Cyprus LiveAway program that's happening March 8th to April 5th of next year, only a few months away. It's hard to believe. Well, it's maybe not hard to believe, given everything that we've been through over the last year and a half. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk a little bit about Cyprus. First of all, I just wanted to give you a bit of context for this webinar today. We first launched the idea of this program way back in March of this year. So it was almost 10 months ago. And I won't go into all the reasons for that, but I think that a lot of our members were saying, and I found that Canadians in general were thinking about doing something different during the winter months. You know, a lot of us go down, a lot of folks go down to, you know, the southern US or Mexico or the Caribbean. And with everything that's been going on, I think that, you know, for some people, our eyes have been opened about other parts of the world where we could get away from Canadian winter, but at the same time, also experience and enjoy a different culture, different people, different scenery, just a completely different vibe than you might be accustomed to. And Cyprus is one of the destinations we're starting off with. We have a bunch of other ones that are in the planning process for next year or for the year after next and beyond. I particularly liked it because, first of all, I know a lot of people that have either live in Cyprus or have or go there in the winter time, you know, because it's known for having like 300 to 340 sunny days a year. It's just a sunny, dry air climate. As you know, many of you will know, I just spent 10 days there before coming here. I'm now in Malta to get a sense of the island and the places we would be staying. And you know, I was really taken aback, most importantly, by the friendliness of the people in Cyprus. They are, I've hardly been to a country where it seems like everybody is there to just say hello and thank you for coming. And really, that for me is one of the big points about Cyprus that I enjoyed. The people are just charming and lovely. This webinar, for those of you who have joined it because you're here to find out about what it's about, as opposed to those who've already joined or already signed up for the program, we made some changes to the hotels, and I want to cover that, as well as just touching on some of the highlights of the program. I'm not going to go into great detail. I didn't bring Katie, our local guide, onto the webinar today because I wanted to focus on where we'll be staying, the changes that we've made. I'll touch on some of the things that we're going to be doing, and as well as a few logistics points for those of you who are joining us. If you haven't met me before, just a few words of introduction. My name is Gordon Dreger. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. I have been in and around travel, organizing trips for Canadians for the better part of 30 years. And my background comes from hospitality. I wrote a book about the subject, looking at the country of Austria and what makes hospitality there special, because it's a big part of what I feel traveling is about. It's about hospitality, and it's something that I like to look out for and encourage and deliver when it comes to our travels all around the world. In that context, it's the mantra, it's the mission behind Wheel and Anchor, which is about like-minded travelers coming together for a good time. And a good time is, you know, it's getting to know each other over a glass of wine, or having a fun excursion somewhere, or it's exchanging stories about other travel destinations. Because the one thing that I think binds people at Wheel and Anchor together, at least in my experience, since we've been around, is that we have that same passion for travel and an interest about learning about new cultures and becoming well-traveled along the way. And so when we talk about well-traveled, it's not about, you know, just going to a whole bunch of destinations in a hurry. And, you know, on the left is this museum and on the right is this monument, but it's taking the time to really indulge in the experience of being there. And so if you've been on one of our trips, and we haven't had all that many, we had a little interruption that we won't talk about for the last year and a half. That is the sense that we deliver. And of course, with the LiveAway program in particular, because we're going to stay in one place for a prolonged period of time for 4 weeks, we can really relax into it and have the chance to meet other people, not just from our group, but other people that come to a place like Cyprus. I mean, Cyprus is full of retirees that come from the UK and Scandinavia. I talked to a group of Scandinavian golfers at the hotel in Cyprus. They come to the same place every year. They love the mild weather and they love the vibe. And in their particular case, their thing is playing golf. And so, but it's just nice to meet interesting people from a different walk of life, and that's what we're all about. Joining me today on the webinar, so it's me. We don't have any special guests today, and so I'll be doing most of the talking, and Paula will get a couple of words in edgewise perhaps, and Joel, of course, who is our co-founder in the background. We are going to be looking at Cyprus and again, the changes that we've made to the program. I'm going to give you a little tour around and answer any questions as well, and give you some logistical information about the program that's happening in March. So as I say, this is a relaunch in the sense that we originally we brought this program out earlier this year. A number of people signed up for it already, but then having been there, we had to make some changes to the hotels. So Cyprus, for those of you, just to give you some geographic information, of course, is in the eastern part of the Mediterranean, to the south of Turkey and to the west of the Middle Eastern countries of Syria and Lebanon. And as a result, it's this location that gives us this wonderful climate. It's very dry, it's very sunny, and the island itself is relatively compact. So it is split in two, and this is one of the interesting things about Cyprus. And of course, many of you will know, because of course the Canadian peacekeepers were on the UN borderline, if you will, the green line as they call it now, resolving the conflicts between the northern portion of the country, of the island, which they refer to as the Republic of Northern Cyprus. It's actually not recognized by most countries in the world. It's largely occupied by Turkish Cypriots, and then of course the Republic of Cyprus, which is an accredited nation in the south. And so that whole history of that conflict, which is quite calm and stable today, is part of what makes this an interesting destination, and we'll get into that a little bit in this webinar, but more importantly, when you visit Cyprus. The other thing to note here, so we've divided the trip. That was a change we made several months ago, because although it's not that big of an island, it's still quite a distance to go from one side to the other. And so for the purpose of being able to take in some of the important sites in the eastern part of the country and the northern part of the country, it was much easier to do that from the city of Limassol, which is in the south. Actually, it's not quite totally to scale on this map here. It's basically in the middle, in the south of the island. So from that point, we can get to pretty much any point in about an hour, maybe a few minutes more. And so that is the strategic decision to do half the trip in Limassol. The second half we'll do in Paphos, which is, if you look over on the bottom left in the southwest corner of the island. From here, we can get up into the western part of the Troodos Mountains, as well as the Akmas Peninsula. I went did a bit of hiking up there. Beautiful countryside, and as well, this is a big beach destination for beach people in the summertime, and so as a result, in the winter, you get a lot of folks coming down to enjoy the mild weather and the relative calm. Let's talk about the two parts. First of all, Limassol. And Limassol is the largest city of Cyprus. It's quite a sprawling city. And what I found about Cyprus, which I found interesting, is that the whole place, the whole island, including its largest cities, are really in the process of being gentrified. And I think that they're seeking in some way an identity, because like Limassol is got older buildings sort of scattered throughout. But what you'll notice when we drive in is, of course, the big skyscrapers that are being built. A lot of money has poured into Limassol in the last 10, 15 years since Cyprus became part of the EU. And so I think it's, struggling a bit to find its identity. The city is situated all across the waterfront. The old town here, which is close to where this photo was taken, has a seafront promenade that runs several kilometers from one end to the next, and it links up beaches and parks and playgrounds, and there's also some restaurants and shops along it, and there's a harbor and Limassol Castle all along this promenade. So, when we have relax and downtime in Limassol, it's a wonderful place just to saunter along and enjoy the seaside, and even go for a dip in the ocean at one of the beaches that's nearby. It's a little cool in March, but it is still swimmable if it's a warm day. And again, the main reason that we're staying in Limassol is because of the proximity to the places around, because we have a number of different excursions to choose from that are easiest access from this city. The hotel that we've chosen there now, so we've gone from an apartment hotel, which was simply not at the standard that we would have been comfortable in, and I discovered literally walking around the old town this lovely, charming boutique hotel called S. Paul or Sir Paul Hotel, and as soon as I looked in the front door, I thought, oh, this is the place that we need to stay, because it's absolutely charming. It's a historic building that's been totally renovated inside, and the staff are super friendly. The owner, in fact, I was talking to her personally when I was working out if we could accommodate our group here. She sort of hand selected all the staff, and they really are. I mean, Cypriots are friendly to begin with, and they go sort of another level, which makes it a great experience, because they want us to have a great time and to experience everything that we can in Cyprus. The hotel is small. It's only got 22 rooms, which means that assuming we can even get all the rooms, that would be about the size of our group. So, but that's one of the things I liked about it. We considered one of the large hotels as well, but I think that the charm of being in a boutique hotel really lends to the type of experience that we're after. All of the rooms are on one floor, actually on the second floor. And so the rooms themselves have been super tastefully decorated. The beds, I sat on them, I jumped on them like I often do, because I'm very particular about making sure you have comfortable mattresses, because you need to have a good night's sleep. The hotel doesn't have a lot of other amenities. I suppose that's the one small drawback. There's no pool on site, but we are looking into making an arrangement to be able to go to some of the other hotels up and down the seafront to possibly be able to use some of their facilities. And as we find out about that, we'll let you know. Again, the rooms are configured in standard, deluxe, and superior. They don't have a kitchenette. There's the other slight drawback. I couldn't find something that was really acceptable level of quality that had a kitchenette in it. But being in the middle of the old town, there are a bunch of restaurants, cafes, anything from very modest places to very high-end restaurants that you can choose from in the area. And the hotel also allows us to use a fridge in the kitchen, so you can store some things. There's just no cooking facilities available in the room, but they want us to look to feel at home, and so I'm sure that they'll do whatever they can to accommodate us and make us feel comfortable. So all in all, as I say, I think it's a wonderful choice of hotels, and given that we have the busier part of the program from Limassol, it's a great place to be able to come back to, chill in the hotel. Oh, there's also a big sort of a living room on the second floor where all of the rooms are surrounded by. So you can go and sort of sit out in large Chesterfields and armchairs and read a book, or hang out for a drink with some of your other members, because we'll practically be taking over the place anyway. So again, all in all, I think it's a lovely choice. I think we're going to feel very, very comfortable there. And as I mentioned, there's also slightly larger rooms, superior suites, like a junior suite that has a little sitting area as well, for those that want to have a little bit of extra elbow room. So let's talk a little bit about the excursions that we're going to do. And as I say, in Limassol, we've got at least 10 or 12 different programs that we're going to offer that you can choose from. And for those of you who aren't familiar with how our LiveAways work, we're going to give you a full excursion list that's going to have somewhere between 15 and 20 different programs on it. Anything from half day and full day trips to classes and courses that might only take a couple of hours, and included in your program is $1,000 activity credit, and you can basically do as much or as little as you want to do. So if you want to do everything, it's going to end up costing a bit more than $1,000, and so we'll charge you for that extra amount. But if you want to chill out and take it easy, you don't have to sign up for everything. If there's anything left over at the end, we'll give you the money back. So this gives an added level of flexibility for all of the programs that we do on the trip. So while we're in Limassol, of course, we're going to visit the historical part, Limassol Castle, which is actually only a short walk from the hotel. And we'll go over to Kourion, which is one of the most important archaeological sites in the country. It's an 8th century city that was built dedicated to the god Apollo. And it's interesting because it's inside a so-called UK sovereign area. So the UK still maintains a military presence on the island in these almost like bases, but it looks more like a town or a village. And so not only do we get to go to some of these places to see the ancient history and the monuments and the buildings that are there, but we also get a bit of a political context in the current day of what life is like and how things are being managed on this divided island. As I mentioned, the Troodos Mountains will be the one destination for at least one, I imagine probably a couple of excursions. We may even go up because the local bus system actually has routes up into the mountains that we can go up on our own to some of these different villages and look around and get a sense of rural life where they're still, they're growing olives and they're making halloumi cheese, and they have, of course, wine gardens and so on up there. So we'll visit the Kikos Monastery, which is a super beautifully decorated treasure that's also up in the Troodos Mountains. So that's some of the things that we'll do. We'll visit Nicosia as well. And Nicosia, of course, is the capital of the island. It's the only divided capital city in the world. And when I say divided, the UN buffer zone, what they call locally the green line, goes right through the middle of the city. And so, we'll arrive in the southern part of the city, and we'll actually walk up Ledro Street. And then for me, when I did it, it reminded me of being in West Berlin, not quite as dramatic back prior to the fall of the Iron Curtain, because you literally, the city is barricaded off right down the middle. So there's streets that just end. And in this one part, there's a checkpoint where you leave the Republic of Cyprus, you show your passport and you cross over, and then you're in the Turkish, I shouldn't say Turkish, it's the Republic of Northern Cyprus. It happens to be strongly Turkish influenced. And so we have a lovely guide who I met as well that will be looking after us while we're touring around the north side of the island and in northern Nicosia. And it's interesting because she's actually good friends, and the godmother, they have a shared godchild. And what I really love about it is that we get the perspective of people who sort of understand and accept the situation that is now. And so we won't talk a lot about the fact that we're going to be making some visits into northern Cyprus, because it's a very sensitive topic among Southern Cypriots. And at the same time, some of the most incredible and rich historic aspects of the island are located in the northern part of Cyprus. And so I think that it's important to go and see these things and visit these things. But at the same time, we have to be a little bit discreet about it, because, as I say, not everybody, or in fact, still a lot of people in Southern Cyprus are very unhappy about the whole thing went down. So I'm not going to give you the history lesson now, but Nicosia is going to be a fascinating look at a city that has centuries and centuries of history, but it's really the history over the last 50 to 100 years that has shaped, what's happening there today. Similarly, Famagusta, which is in the very, very eastern part of the island, was a city that was overtaken during the so-called Turkish occupation, as they refer it to in the south. And a large part of the city was just from one day to the next cordoned off and became kind of like a ghost town. And it has beautiful beaches and resorts. And a lot of it is just completely abandoned because it's still in this sort of disputed territory. And on top of that, I mean, you can see this church here that was partially destroyed and then converted into a mosque. And again, it's a very interesting evolution that has occurred here. One thing I should say about all that, it's perfectly safe to go to the Northern Cyprus. I mean, we have to take our passports with us because we're, of course, leaving the Republic of Cyprus. We'll go in the same vehicle. We don't need to change vehicles. And so it's all fine and there's no problem whatsoever. But again, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like going into a different realm completely. Let's talk about the second part of the trip before we get into some of the logistical details. So after we spend 14 nights in Limassol, we're going to head to the southwestern part of the island, Paphos. And Paphos is is the second most important beach destination in summertime. Now we're of course not going in summertime, but in the summertime, people flock from all over Europe to Paphos to go to these beautiful beaches, and the beachfront is lined with these, large all-inclusive hotels. There's a wonderful promenade along. But in the wintertime, it quietens down, and you get and there's no families and there's no screaming children around, or very few. But instead, you have retirees that come from Scandinavia. I met a bunch of Swedish people, as I mentioned, that come down to play golf every year, and a lot of folks from the UK. To enjoy the mild weather during the winter time. And so Paphos is spread out into a number of different parts. I've selected, again, a lovely boutique style hotel, more modern in design than S. Paul. But as soon as I walked in the front door, I was immediately taken by how charming this hotel is. And again, the staff, super, super friendly. I was particularly taken aback by how seriously they also dealt with it, as in the S. Paul Hotel as well, but with the whole COVID sanitation requirements. I mean, they fogged my luggage when I came in the door. They ensure that every guest is adhering to the local situation as far as wearing masks in common areas. I was very, very pleased by that. And again, that's the beauty of these smaller hotels, is they really care about the guest experience, which is not to say that they don't in the big hotels. It's just different, and I'm sure you get what I mean. The hotel has lovely common areas. Again, a beautiful warm feel to it. The dining room, where we have a breakfast buffet every morning, as we do in the S. Paul Hotel, never feels too busy. This hotel is a little larger. It has about 100 rooms in it. And it's also got a lovely little library area and function area where we'll probably do some of our activities and events. There is a pool, which I didn't put a photo in here. It's just outside the windows that you see along the side. A lovely swimming pool and sun deck area. And then on the top floor, there is a rooftop terrace, which can be closed in with plastic sheets, or it's open like this, has a view over the sea. Also a great spot where we can do some activities, have some gatherings, and maybe a wine tasting. And again, it's a great spot to sort of hang out. So I really enjoyed the vibe of this hotel. Location wise, it's right in the middle of what they call Kato Paphos. It's the harbor area. So in about 10 minutes, you've got a whole myriad of restaurants, the access to the Paphos fortress, which is down by right down on the harbor. You can get to the seafront promenade, which runs, as I mentioned, along the main beach where all the larger hotels are, and you can walk for a few kilometers down that. So I think the location is really, really good. It's also close to transit. There's a great little bus system there that allows you to access the surrounding villages, Coral Bay, the so-called Old Town, which is not really so old anymore. It's sort of also a bit being gentrified, but you can get around easily on your own through sort of all of Paphos, and it enables you to be, to get out and get around. The accommodations in the Anemi Hotel are studios. The nice thing here is that all the rooms, except for the executive suites, do have kitchenettes in them. So that's kind of handy. And that was, again, it was difficult to find hotels that had this kind of facility. So I'm very pleased that the kitchenettes are in all the rooms. As you get the look and feel of them, they're bright, they're newly renovated. They're bright, they have wonderful colors to them. It really makes you feel at home. So they've got studios, they've got one-bedrooms apartments, which of course have a nice little living area. They all have balconies as well, so you can get some fresh air. On the top floor, they have basically extra large studios. They call them executive suites, which have very large terraces outside. Yeah, they're just a sort of a different style. You kind of get the sense of it here. So again, I think the hotel is a lovely choice. We will look at being able to get, for those that wish, although here in Paphos, this hotel, I think, has enough facilities that we should be happy. We don't need to go to one of the big all-inclusives to avail ourselves of those facilities, but they are around if one would like to do that. So we will obviously do a tour, an orientation tour of Paphos to get a sense of what is where is the castle, where's the harbor area, so that when we arrive, you'll already know what's in the immediate area and how to get around. From Paphos, we will do at least one trip up to the Akamos Peninsula, which is just about between half an hour and 60 minutes north of Paphos. And one thing that, weather permitting, we'll do, it's likely be towards the end of the trip, at the very end of March, beginning of April, when the seas are calmer, is do this wonderful cruise around to the area they call Blue Lagoon. And the water is like, the color of the water, the coastline is just magical. Regardless, we'll probably do some walks and hikes up in Akamas. There's a number of different outdoor activities to do up in this area. So some of them will be pre-arranged excursions, and some of them we might just do independently on the fly, just depending on weather and how everybody feels. We're also going to do some culinary programs here where we'll get a look into Cypriot cuisine. Halloumi cheese is one of the things that Cypriots are very proud of. And if you like halloumi, I love halloumi, and they grill it and they do it in all kinds of different ways. So we'll see how they make it. We'll also see how you can prepare it, because you can actually buy it in Canada and some of the other delicious seafood dishes. So we'll have, again, a culinary experience. There's a wonderful fellow, he's quite well known in Paphos, called Augustinos, who will do a pottery class, for example, and show us how to make some of the classic sort of pottery that is known from this region. We'll do at least one wine tour up into the western part of the Troodos Mountains. And here we'll get to experience some of the different grape varieties like Zinisteri and Mavro. And this is what I like about traveling in countries like this, is that it's not all about Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon. You get to try grape varieties that have been around for a long, long time. But for the most part, we've never heard of. When was the last time you tried a Cypriot wine? And for the golfers in our group, because a number of people did mention it, to ask about that, there are 4 very nice golf courses in the immediate area around Paphos. And so we'll set up some golf days for those that are interested. In contrast to our Madeira LiveAway, where I said it's probably not worthwhile to bring your clubs. If you are an avid golfer, you may want to consider bringing your golf clubs with you because of the 4 courses that are there. There's a Nick Faldo course, which is sort of their premium one, that goes for about 150 bucks Canadian a round, or courses that are sort of more modestly priced as well. But all in all, the scenery is beautiful. And so for those that wish, golfing is definitely an option. Talking about the weekends, I know when we originally launched the program, we had talked about going here, going there, but in having been to Cyprus and seeing the things that there are to do there, I decided it doesn't make sense to do a lot of side trips, partly because it's also quite onerous now with the flight passes and vaccine requirements and so on that are required. One thing I did do is I did go and take a couple of days and fly over to Beirut, Lebanon. I know that some of you may be surprised by that. I've been numerous times to Lebanon. I love the country and the city. It's very vibrant. It has undergone an incredibly challenging time, as many of you will know from the current affairs, and I'm not going to go into the details about all that. But I wanted to go and see, is it still worth visiting? And I think the answer to that is yes. They're facing difficult times right now. But at the same time, the resounding comment I got is, please come and visit us. They need travelers. They need people to come. So it's something that we may do as an extension. A couple of our members have indicated interest in going to Beirut and seeing a little bit of southern Lebanon. Again, I love the city. It doesn't look the same as it did before as a result of the terrible disaster, the explosion they had a year and a half ago. But the resilience of the people is there, and it's a bargain because of the devaluation of the currency. So if it's something that you're interested in, please let us know, and we're going to put something together probably at the end of our LiveAway in Cyprus, because it makes sense. It doesn't really make sense to go and come back to Lebanon. It makes sense to go there and then continue on or return back to Canada. So let's touch on the additional information. So if you haven't already gotten it, our new brochure with the new pricing is available. Again, there's a few different room categories that are available. So we've given the most sort of common combinations: standard and studio, standard and one bedroom, et cetera, et cetera. But of course, we also have a somewhat limited selection or inventory of rooms available, because of course the Paula Hotel has only 22 rooms. So I apologize if you don't get your first choice right off the bat, but Paula will be able to give you a price on any combination of rooms that we have available. But there you get the prices in Canadian dollars. And remember, that's for a full 4 weeks and includes $1,000 of activity credit. In addition, by the way, I have also thrown in, because we did make those changes that again, were a little bit unavoidable because I just felt that the other accommodations were not up to snuff. I'm throwing in as well a welcome dinner and a farewell dinner that will be included in the program as well. So that's an extra bonus. I'm not going to go through all the inclusions in detail here, but I think some important things to note is the activity credit that I've mentioned. We're going to give everybody a local data SIM card. And I think, again, because of the nature of how we want you to experience this program, we're going to set up like a WhatsApp group so that we can communicate together. And if people are going out to do something fun, or say, hey, does anybody want to go and walk along the beachfront promenade or do this or that, there'll be a way for us all to communicate, as well as if you have any challenges along the way between ourselves as the host, our local guide, there'll always be somebody there to sort of look out for you and help out if you need it. And so that's in the program as well. Of course, a transit card to enable you to get around, welcome dinner, farewell dinner. And so I think that there's a lot in the program, and of course, private transfers as well. Paula wanted me to mention that, is that you can book your airfare to arrive or depart at any time, and you will be met at the airport and brought to the hotel in Limassol, and from Paphos back to the hotel at the time that you need. So you don't have to worry about what time you leave or come back. Exclusions, of course, as usual, airfare, which I'll touch on in a second, and then cancellation insurance, and then, of course, any of the other activities that you decide to do on your own outside of the framework of the program are obviously not included. Looking at airfares, we were just discussing this just before we did the webinar. At the moment, from Toronto, it's around 1,300 to 1,500 Canadian dollars, a little bit more if you're coming from the west coast of Canada. I should mention as well that, you know, there's a number of different ways to get there, but again, the beauty is, you know, choose the route, the airline, the timing that makes the most sense for you, and we'll make sure to get you from the airport to the hotel. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about airfare. So just talking about next steps for a second, I wanted to just give you a few logistical points, and I think there's a few questions that have come in, so bear with me for one more minute while and I'll get to those. So for those of you that have already joined and are deciding that you'd like to continue with the different hotels and the different price point now, all you need to do is just have a look, study the brochure, send an email to Paula saying, hey, I'd like to go for option A, B, C, or D, or the rooms that are shown there. And then at that point, Paula will reconfirm back the availability, or in case it's not available, what the other option is. And then also you'll get if you would like to book your flights through us, and please, you're more than welcome to do them on your own. Our hands are pretty full, but at the same time, we're happy to help you. Paula will send a flight request form, and then we'll get a quotation off to you for flights. And then at that point, once all the details are sorted, we will send you the final confirmation letter, and the final payment will be due by December the 1st. Because of course we have to nail all the arrangements down. And then at that point, you'll get the detailed excursion list from us, or earlier if we're just working on a few details for you to select the excursions that you want to go on. And I just wanted to say one other thing as well. A couple of members had asked about the coronavirus situation. Of course, it's all over the media these days that certain parts of Europe are experiencing a rather dramatic fourth wave. There is a slight uptick in cases in Cyprus as well, but if you look at the charts, it's sort of somewhat more gradual. I think it is inevitable that Europe and other parts of the world are going to see another wave. I think we're all pretty clear on that. At the same time, I think that they have managed the situation reasonably well in Cyprus, and I don't think it is going to inhibit our ability to travel there. They have a flight pass system that you have to fill in when you arrive, and so they're pretty rigorous about managing the pandemic situation there. So I feel confident. I don't think that anything is going to happen. I mean, you know, anything's possible, so I can't make any promises or guarantees. But I feel pretty good that by March, things will settle down a bit again, and it will be fine to be able to travel there. So on the airfare point, a lot of the connections that you see will go through London. So just something to keep aware of. Of course, the UK has a testing requirement for anybody who actually has to leave the airport. So if you are looking at flights that go into London, for example, into Heathrow and out of Gatwick, or where you have to overnight, anything that requires you to actually enter the UK, there is a day 2 testing requirement that you have to undertake. So you basically have to order a rapid test online for $20 and then do the test at home or in your hotel. I did this process and then email in the result to be compliant. So just be aware of that if you're going via the UK. So good. Now it's time to answer a few of the questions, and I see a bunch have come in. So Paula,
I've got a list ready for you. We'll work through these best we can. So I'll start here. Jean had asked if there was a particular hub in Europe that we are, for most of the travelers that we're traveling.
No particular
through.
hub. So Jean is coming from out west. So it's probably more likely that London would be the more logical hub if you're coming from Western Canada. I should point out as well that from Western Canada, the flights from Cyprus back to London, for example, don't connect with the connecting flight. So you may have to do an overnight. But I always say, you know, actually, I like to do an overnight in a connecting city because, you know, you fly from, you know, let's say Cyprus from Larnaca to London, it's about 4 hours, and then you've got another 8 or 9 hours over to Canada. Sometimes it's nice to break up the journey. So don't look at an overnight necessarily as a bad thing. Just keep in mind what I said about the UK is that there is a requirement in there. There are also connections via Munich, via Frankfurt, and I didn't see them as often, but there are definitely flights through Paris and Amsterdam as well. So choose the option that makes the most sense to you and look at them. The only other thing is that there are some flights that Paul and I were discussing that you'll see the cheap flights that are like $800-900 that you can fly if you take Air Transat to London and then EasyJet. That's a possibility if you are an intrepid traveler and you want to do that. That's how I actually flew EasyJet myself. I'm one of their best customers. So I don't have anything bad to say about them, but it means that you have to self-transfer. So you cannot check your luggage through. You have to, you know, pick up your luggage, go in and check into the other airline. You need to leave enough time. So the less expensive routes are, and then if you want to fly on Air Transat, I'll make no further comment about that. I mean, you may have had an experience, but it's not the same as flying a full service airline. So just keep that in mind.
Perfect.
Okay.
I'll keep some of the flight questions together. So I have someone else who had asked, I think actually it was Bob, if of the major airports. So do you want to share
Larnaca is Larnaca is the major international airport. That's likely where you're going to fly to. Paphos does have a smaller airport, which has a lot of charter flights from the UK. It's less likely you'll find a flight in there, but you might. Keep in mind that between Larnaca Airport and Paphos is an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes drive. So we're not talking hours and hours and hours of transit time. To keep it simple, it's probably just as easy to fly in and out of Larnaca.
Perfect. Another question Nancy had was, with what about arriving a day or two earlier in Cyprus? Is it possible to add a few days on the end as well?
Sure, absolutely. You can pre and post nights, we can manage easily. So if you do feel like you want to arrive a bit earlier, I mean, remember we're there for 28 nights, so I'm not sure that it's essential, but if you'd like to, we will facilitate it for you. We'll set up the transfer for you. It's not a problem. I will likely be there one day earlier because I'll be coming from Madeira, but I won't be there much earlier than that.
Yes. And I mean, it'll still be warmer than Canada. So essential or not, I don't know whether
that's the one thing I can
matters. Wally had a question here, and I was just going to touch on this. When can we expect firm quotes on airfare? Do you want me to share that?
Sure, go ahead, Paula. Yeah.
So my plan is to reconfirm everyone in new accommodations, and then hopefully as soon as that is sorted, I'll be sending out a flight request form that you can complete with your specifics so that I can take into consideration your preferences and then provide quotes back. I anticipate either the end of this week or next week to be at that stage.
Yeah. So in other words, soon. We can now do airfare for you quite soon.
Yes, perfect. Couple other questions here, then we can carry on. Alina was asking if we can do 2 weeks instead of 4.
I think that's a possibility. Why don't we get back directly? If anybody else has that question, just email Paula and we'll see if that's possible, but it's not impossible, I think.
Okay. Also, if breakfast was included specifically, I think that question came up with the SPAL because
throughout. Yeah. Breakfast is, sorry, I didn't mention breakfast. They have a lovely breakfast there, breakfast buffet, both at SPAL and the NME.
Perfect. And you did touch on this, but might have been overlooked. So if there were other weekend options aside from Beirut that we were offering.
So we aren't going to formally offer any more for a couple of different reasons. And again, I think that the flights and the hassles and so on, and not to mention that I think there's enough there to do that to go in and out is just going to be a bit cumbersome. And I think that you'll find if you haven't traveled internationally since the pandemic, it just adds a whole other layer of hassle on for that. And I think that to do, for example, Tel Aviv, we were talking about, and Cairo Justice, you should spend more than just a weekend. You should spend at least a few days there. And so we aren't going to offer them officially. I would say, if anything, the one we will organize is Beirut for anyone that's interested.
Perfect. Another question here from Wally regarding golf. Would you suggest bringing clubs, or are clubs available, rentals available?
Rentals are available. If you feel like you may want to go a few times, then you may want to consider bringing your own clubs. Keep in mind what the airlines may charge for that. It varies a bit from airline to airline. So take that into account, but we will put on the excursion form what the green fees are and the cost as well of renting clubs locally. If you're going to go once or twice, it's probably better just to rent the clubs locally, I would say.
Perfect. A couple other questions. What are the current entry requirements for Cyprus?
So Cyprus, basically, you require to fill in the Cyprus flight pass. So it's a form where they ask you all kinds of questions about, obviously, your name and where you're from and where you've been in the last 14 days. They ask you to provide a copy of your immunization certificate to confirm that you've been vaccinated, and that needs to be, and they ask you about your flight information. So that needs to be completed before you can check in. So technically they will, I can confirm, because when I flew there, I had some challenges with the form, but yes, you will check in, you'll get a barcode, and on the basis of that, that's the only entry requirement. And of course, because we require all members to be vaccinated to participate on the trip anyway, that will cover you for entrance to Cyprus.
Perfect. Yeah, I'd also like to address that on our weekly newsletters, we've linked an entry requirements document, which will take you to a spreadsheet. And there's 3 links, which will direct you to exactly what the current updates are. As of May 25th was the last update stating that Canada's in what's classified as their orange zone, and we are required to do a PCR test 72 hours prior to departure. And people have been asking me where they can get those done. There's different companies all across Canada that are offering them. So you just have to see who and what that is in your local region. Keeping in mind that that could still change before March. So, but that's another detail to stay up to date on. Let me just see, we've got a bunch more questions that have come in here. Someone was asking what the current COVID restrictions are in Cyprus regarding mask mandates and vaccine certificates required for entering into restaurants, etc.
So they aren't locally requiring you to show a vaccination certificate to enter restaurants, as in other parts of Europe. Technically, you are supposed to wear masks when you enter into pretty much any enclosed space, much as like I think is the situation in Canada and in other parts of Europe. And then when you sit down in the restaurant, you can take your mask off. That's pretty much it as far as the requirements locally. Keep in mind that a lot of the dining there is al fresco. In March, it'll depend on how cool it is in the evening. And so in that case, yeah, obviously you don't have to wear a mask outside in public, but when you go inside, and you'll see at the hotels, when you go into the hotel, they request that you wear a mask in the hotel, in the elevator, and all the way, at the buffet. And again, I think the rules that make sense. Let's see what happens by March. I don't see that going away necessarily by then, but those are the restrictions that are in place.
Perfect. Couple of questions. Have we confirmed the number of nights in Beirut at this stage?
Beirut will be 3 to 4 nights. And so if you're interested in Beirut, just again, mention it to Paula, and then she'll pass the note on to me, and I'll deal directly with anybody that's interested in Beirut. I'm just working out specifics on Beirut. And again, if you're interested, let me know, and I'll give you a little synopsis of what the program will entail and what you need to be aware of, because Beirut is under a travel advisory by the Canadian government, given what's going on there. So you just need to be very aware about all of that. I just want everybody to go in with eyes wide open.
Perfect. And Danielle was asking that those nights would essentially start April 5th.
We'll do them after the trip. Exactly.
Yes.
We'll do them at the end. It's just much easier.
Makes sense.
Than doing it in the middle. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. A couple more questions here we'll try to get to and still keep it hopefully within an hour. Let me just see. Sorry. There was a question with regards to if someone is to come down with COVID and is to be hospitalized, does Wheel and Anchor help monitor medical progress and assist with communications if necessary?
So yeah, I mean, that's a bit of a tricky question to answer. I mean, technically speaking, we if somebody has any kind of a medical incident whatsoever, we are obliged to pass the situation into the hands of the insurance company. But of course, we're not going to sort of send you off and say goodbye, good luck. That's not going to be the case. I mean, we're obviously there to make sure our members are looked after and attended to. So, we will do what we can to help within the scope of what it is that we are able to do. Again, the travel insurance companies always sort of advise us that as the travel facilitator, basically when any incidents arise, they are the ones that sort of take over the situation. And it's not like we don't have necessarily extra people to sort of, deal with the person in the hospital. But again, we will obviously, with any medical situation, make sure that you are in the right place and attended to. And, with our local guide, we're going to make sure that you're well looked after. That's
Yeah, I think another thing that's important, because that came from Diana, who hasn't booked with us yet.
Right.
Diana, we do on the booking form request a emergency contact. So your emergency contact would be notified in a situation like that and put in communication with the hospital, because you would want someone, that's authorized to speak on your behalf, likely to make decisions for you if need be.
Exactly.
So perfect. I think that we've touched on everything now.
Good. Well, I'm sure many of you will have other questions about Cyprus. Please do email them in, and preferably email them. Because of all the changes that have gone on, as you can imagine, Paula in particular has got her hands quite full. And so we want to make sure that everybody is well looked after, that your questions are answered. We have a strong commitment to that. But as you can imagine, with everything that's transpired in the recent weeks and months and the last year and a half, we are pretty busy. And so, which is not to say, again, we want to make sure that you're looked after. So if you email any questions in, I will also answer questions that I can. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable to join us, and we look forward to having you along. It's going to be a marvelous trip. I'm excited to show you Cyprus, to show you our hospitality, and for you to have a chance to get a little bit of a break from winter. So, as I say, please do email us for any more questions. And you've got obviously our contact information by now. And I look forward to seeing you then, if not sooner. I'm actually on my way back to Canada myself, believe it or not, a week from today, after almost 20 months of being out of the country. I'm finally on my way back. So wish me luck. And again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being such loyal members of Wheel and Anchor, and I look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon. Hi there, I'm here in Nicosia in the northern part of Cyprus with our lovely guides who are going to be looking after our Wheel and Anchor members next year when we come here for our LiveAway to Cyprus. This is Shireen and Katie.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm Shireen. I'm looking forward to having you as our guest, as there are a lot of historical and cultural sites to show all over Cyprus to you. So really looking forward to see you.
Really looking forward to see you too. I'm Katie. We are working together beautifully with Shireen, although the politics of this country wants us to be separate. But being a Turkish Cypriot and a Greek Cypriot, we learn to work together. So besides the beautiful, interesting monuments we are going to see, Gordon, we have also stories to tell and stories to share. Stories about our lives, stories of women, stories of everyday life.
And beautiful food we have here.
I was thinking of the same thing, gastronomy. Come along and try the best recipes in the world, and wine.
And be with us.
And there's going to be some great stories, and that's really what it's all about here in Cyprus. So we all look forward to welcoming you in March.
Yes, indeed.